I, 47 male, am a former child-free man who is about to have his first child with a woman, Pam, 37 female, who I had a casual relationship with. This was an unplanned pregnancy, and while I wasn't in love with the idea of becoming a father, especially with 50 being right around the corner, I'm learning to adjust, because I haven't been one to shirk away from my responsibilities in nearly 30 years, nor am I the child-free type who has a disdain for children. For years, I was a semi-involved fun uncle type who attended most events that my nieces and nephews had, gave out nice gifts, and had set up funds, trusts for my siblings as kids, as up until now I saw them as my only heirs. I had the great fortune of being a smart man with the ability to be in the right place at the right time and became CEO. After receiving the blessings of my siblings and their spouses, I gave my nieces and nephews cars, expensive trips, and college funds. In my will, I stated that my nearly $1 million life insurance policy was to be divided up equally between my siblings as kids, along with the money from the sale of my main and summer home. My savings, stocks, shares would be divided up as well, and a few other smaller properties. This is something that I was always upfront about, as I wanted no confusion after my passing. Everyone was fine with this. Now, with the pending birth of my daughter, I met with my lawyer and have drawn up a new will, and just like before, I decided to sit everyone down and tell them about the changes. My lawyer also thought it would be a good idea to get everyone to sign a statement acknowledging that they agree to the changes. I thought it too, and didn't consider it an issue. Unfortunately, I was wrong, and several members of my family voiced their disappointment or outright anger that I would be giving the majority of my assets to my daughter. They stated that it wasn't fair how I kept leading them all to believe that they would expect one thing, but end up getting another lesser thing. A few of them even questioned paternity, but the way they did it made it feel like it was less out of concern for me and more about trying to gatekeep the money and judging Pam based off of awful stereotypes. This has put me off, as the way I see it, this is my way of making sure that my daughter gets everything that she's entitled to, and the best support possible to make up for the fact that she will have the misfortune of having a dad in his 60s and 70s when she's still growing up. I'm currently of mind to just give my daughter 90% of my assets instead of the original 60%. But I wanted to run this by a few non-biased minds, as right now, I'm still a little emotional about this, and my goddaughter suggested I come here. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Because someone else brought this up, I just wanted to be clear about one thing and answer something else. The first is that a DNA test was already done, and Pam's unborn baby is 99.99% mine. But my family doesn't know I did the test, because I didn't think that it was something that I had to tell them. The second is that Pam is African American, and that's why I mentioned that my family was making awful accusations about her. Pam isn't someone I just met, and I've known her to be a trustworthy and reliable person since I met her. They're more interested in your money than you. I say you give them nothing, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. No one is owed an inheritance, period. Not only is it totally understandable that the majority of your assets would go to your own child, but your nieces and nephews have enjoyed many years of your generosity already. You have done your due diligence in informing them so they can plan accordingly. If they have an issue with that, it is theirs to deal with. You have done nothing wrong. You could give 100% to your daughter and you still wouldn't be the a-hole. No one is entitled to anything, family or not. My wife and I both, 28 female, live in the Denver area. My wife works for an airline that allows her to give her parents flight benefits, as well as one friend who she listed as her sister, as well as myself. Now, the only people that flies 100% free, unless we get first class, is myself and my wife. Her parents and sister do not. They do get a nice discount, but it's not free. My wife has been working for this airline for 3 years, and in that span of time, her parents and sister have managed to rack up a $7,000 bill. The way my wife's airline works is that she will receive an invoice for all the flights taken at the end of each month, and if she can't pay it, they're just taken off of her payroll. Basically, we all have the luxury of fly now, pay later. Airline employees do not make a lot of money. My wife definitely doesn't because she only works weekends. My wife hasn't received a paycheck in over 2 years. Important detail here. All of us would fly what is known as standby. Our boarding passes would say standby until we were assigned seats. Then we would receive new boarding passes that would look the exact same if we paid full price. Remember this. Now, I do make money that covers all of the bills and even left over for spending money. But here's the problem. Her father is a traveling welder who gets money to fly back home. Of course, he doesn't tell his company that he flies at a big discount. And because he works in remote areas with smaller airports, his company will just cut him a $1,000 plus check and he will pocket it. Before virus, her mother and sister would fly all over the world for months on end. Last month was my breaking point. When my wife asked if they could start paying back for the flights just a little at a time, her mother pulled the whole "I gave birth to you" crap. Her sister told her about all the time she drove her to school, and her dad talked about all the money he spent raising her. I snapped. Yes, I yelled at them, and called them all roaches who didn't deserve the flight benefits, and I threatened to call my father-in-law's company and tell them how he has been pocketing thousands of dollars of their money. It was a back-and-forth yelling match that ended with my wife crying. Out of rage, I called my father-in-law's company and explained how he was taking their money, and it cost him his job. When I called his company, they were already suspicious because they required all his boarding passes and receipt of the flights. He had a receipt from before my wife started working at the airline, and my sister-in-law would go into editor and make the receipt look new. He messed up recently because he turned in a boarding pass that said standby on it. The lady I talked to said they were just going to let it go because it wasn't the first time an employee turned in a boarding pass like that. But because of me explaining the whole situation, I cost him his job. Am I the a-hole? Edit. To clear a few questions I keep seeing. First and foremost, the math doesn't make sense to me either. My wife just simply showed me her payroll on her company website, and it shows amount X for flights that need to be paid for, and the amount she makes, then the remaining balance. As for her, she has taken them off her benefits, but she was just too used to the aggression and viewed it as normal behavior. But I will never apologize for taking a stand. As for my father-in-law, we heard from her sister, who is currently the only person to apologize to my wife, that it didn't matter if I had called him out or not. Come to find out, he was doing more than just faking travel receipts. I didn't ask for full details. To keep it short, he broke some OSHA regulations and was on camera doing so, as well as some harassment complaints. And I see that some people didn't read the full story. His company was already on to him faking the travel receipts. But this won't matter in the slightest. He started working for another welding company, but he's staying local. As I said, her sister apologized, and that's what mattered the most to my wife. So that's what matters to me. Not the a-hole. They are leeches. You gave them a chance to do the right thing, and they refused. You should also have your wife remove them from the benefit. That is so rude for your father-in-law to just pocket the money, not give it to you to pay for the flight. Ugh. Get rid of the freeloaders. You don't need that in your life. Not the a-hole, and I would start looking into legal options, frankly. What they did is fraud and theft. Your father-in-law's own actions cost him his job, not you. Not the a-hole. They should have been paying your wife back for their flights the whole time. She isn't there to fund their travel plans. Actions have consequences, and now they've learned that the hard way. They've essentially been stealing your wife's entire pay for many, many months. It should have stopped long ago. My wife's father is a very wealthy man who has done a lot for his kids financially, but is also controlling and aggressive. He owns multiple properties and allows his kids to live in them for very little or no rent. We live in one of those properties, but recently he did a lot of damage to it. His wife, mother-in-law, told him that my wife and her brother's girlfriend were picking on her. Instead of looking for actual evidence, he trashed both houses. Now, there isn't actually anything we can do, as he owns them. My mom was told of this and came over to bring us new furniture and some food, as the stove is now broken. She had her new boyfriend, Anthony, with her. I was telling my mom how we can't do anything as he owns the house. My mom asked about the cars, as she had noticed they were both vandalized as well. I said he also owned those, so we really don't have many options. Anthony was like, "Wow, do you two own anything?" in a rude tone. I told him that wasn't cool, and if he trashed us again, he'd be asked to leave. He was actually like, "Oh, sorry." But my mom interjected that we can't even make them leave because it is father-in-law's house. I just gave her a look, and she said, "Well, we can't, as father-in-law loves her." Then she took out her phone, called him, knowing full well what he did, and asked him if she could be in the house. He said yes. I was pissed and told her to get out. Don't ever come back, and I'll still have a relationship with her, but she better not want to see future grandchildren because she is an aggressor to their mom. She told me to calm down, and I was like, "Go," and yelled at her. She called me later and said I overreacted. I yelled at her that she humiliated my wife, weaponized her a-hole father, and she can't step foot here again, and if she wants to still be close, she better grovel to my wife and beg forgiveness. I could hear Anthony in the background telling her to hang up on me. Now everyone is saying I way overreacted, and I'm an a-hole. You did overreact, and yes, you're the a-hole. They were making goofy jokes, basically calling you and your wife mooches. I mean, their statements are true, that the father-in-law pays for everything. Maybe that's why you're so salty. Everyone sucks here. Every single one of you. Y'all need to find a place that does not belong to her father. Same with cars. That is a toxic relationship and unsafe. Your mom's boyfriend had a bit of a point, though rude. Same with your mom. Y'all have no control while you live there, it seems. Guessing no legal rental agreement. I don't see what she did as picking on you, but childish. And yeah, you overreacted too. All of y'all need to grow up and become self-sufficient and get away from her father. Jeez. Everyone sucks here. Yes, your mom was rude. However, she and her boyfriend do have a point. You and your wife are dangerously dependent on her father. And the two of you need to figure out how to support yourselves in an independent and safe way. I, also, would be shocked to know that a married couple was entirely dependent on one of their parents for housing, cars, etc. Your mother made an important point, clearly, in that phone call to your father-in-law. It sounds as if you and your wife needed that wake-up call. Pay attention to the substance of that message, even if it was delivered in a not-too-subtle way. My partner has allowed his friend to stay at our place until he found a place of his own. The renting situation in Australia is really tough now, especially in Queensland, and it's not easy to find a place to rent. Initially, I agreed for the friend to stay because I thought it would only be for a couple of weeks. But this has been going on since September, and I've had enough. This friend, let's call him Brett, has done very minimal to help out around the house and just basically sits around a lot and does nothing. I do most of the cooking and cleaning around the house, which I don't mind when it was just my partner and I. But add another person into the equation, plus his 2 boys around 6 or 7 years old that come over every other weekend. It gets a bit ducking much. It's been non-stop, and at this point, I feel like a maid in my own home. Our groceries and utilities has definitely gone up, and he only started giving us money when my partner said something, after weeks and weeks of freeloading. On the weekends and after work, Brett just sits around, smokes and drinks, even our booze, and expects dinner to be ready, whilst explaining about his exes and why he hates the general female population. My partner had a talk with him about pulling his weight around the house more, but I see very little change. I'm not the most perfect and cleanest person myself, but I like the house to at least look decent at most times. I am really sick of living with Brett, and I am over filthy and lazy people. It has definitely caused some tension in the household, and I am definitely being very clear that I am not happy with the current living conditions. I feel that my partner is also brushing off his friend's behavior too easily and letting his friend take advantage of him. My partner is reluctant to kick him out because Brett will just end up living in his car. I can't tolerate this BS anymore, and it is definitely affecting our relationship. Not the a-hole. I see why no woman wants to be with Brett. Take off somewhere for a while after leaving a lot of mess. Make sure there's no food, toilet paper, or clean towels first. Not the a-hole, but you need a game plan here, and you need to take action. You need to sit down with your partner and express honestly and fully how you won't accept having to take care of so many extra people in the house. I notice you haven't mentioned what your boyfriend does around the house, so position to him that he help with the housework and pick up the slack Brett is not. Tell him honestly how much extra work it is to maintain the house with Brett and sometimes 2 kids here, and that you need help. If your boyfriend refuses to take on any of the chores to lessen your load, or tries to say, well, Brett is supposed to do that, then agree and say that the 2 of you at the same time need to sit down and have an adult discussion with Brett about his behavior and what you expect from him moving forward. You both have to be a united front. So my husband, 39 male, is friends and co-workers with both people. He's kept a super awkward friendship with, we'll call him Frank, 42 male, by not talking about the situation. The situation is Frank hooked up with 40 female, Marlene, and she ended up pregnant. Now he's taken her to court to try and get out of child support. His side being that she told him she couldn't get pregnant after he said he didn't want kids. Husband has tried to stay neutral on both sides by not talking about it to either side. But at home it hurts him, because we've been trying for a kid for 3 years and have been working through some fertility issues. And his friend gets someone pregnant like it's nothing, and then wants nothing to do with it. So that really pisses me off. So Frank ended up being at the same ball game as us. Hubby said he wants to come hang out. I said I wasn't really interested in hanging out with a person like that. One thing led to another, and we're hanging out together. Ultimately, after the game is over and we're all BSing, I end up calling him out for it being his responsibility as an adult. He ends the conversation by saying he has to pay this whole time. I walked away, but had to go back and defend my husband, but he wants to hear none of that. Truth hurts. Then Frank's side piece gets involved, and we have to leave before I get us kicked out. Am I the a-hole for even talking about it? Maybe different place, different time, but I had no intention of seeing him again. Also, he brought it up because he said we're all family. I said no. He asked why. I said you know why. The rest is history. I'm gonna lean towards everyone sucks here. Whether the pregnant woman lied about her supposed infertility or not, the friend did get her pregnant, and so he ought to step up to the plate. However, the situation is really none of your concern, regardless if you know about it. And honestly, it sounds like some of your feelings are stemming from jealousy, resentment, because of your own fertility issues. And while I do sympathize with you on that, it's not the friend's fault that you and your husband are having these difficulties. It wasn't your place to speak on the situation. Your fertility issues aren't his fault or his problem. A very salty you're the a-hole. Truth hurts. She told him she couldn't get pregnant after he said he didn't want kids. If this is the truth, then she lied to him and baby-trapped him. He didn't want the kid. He didn't think she could have kids. She has the kid and tries to take him to the cleaners for child support. You're letting your own fertility issues cloud your judgment about this situation. You're the a-hole.